Hello everybody, I hope everyone is well, and I also hope you are well today, Robert.
I'm well, and happy to be back in the studio today. Yeah, although, what an experience we had in Israel, hey? And in the rest of Middle East. Wow, it was such an experience. Walking there in Wadi Rum, where Moses and the 2 million, plus minus 2 million Israelites were walking and looking up at those stars and looking at the same formation as what Moses must have looked at, you know, and spending time in that red desert. It was amazing. It was so awesome.
How God led them through the desert, opening the path for them.
Correct.
If they didn't have God, it wouldn't have survived.
Yeah.
God kept them alive.
Yeah, and we had such an amazing experience in Jerusalem as well, you know, walking where Jesus walked and where he taught and where he healed and where he died for our sins. It was amazing. I really received a blessing from that. I'm sure you also did.
There's so many things that we now have the ability to share with our viewers.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hope all of you watched 2 weeks ago when we sat on the Mount of Olives, when we did that episode. It was amazing. But what do we have today? Are we doing questions and answers today?
No, we have another special episode.
Yeah.
We also have another guest.
We do.
This time it's not Martin.
Yeah, so it's our first guest speaker, I guess, and it's a surprise, and I think we should go and meet him. And go say hello, and then introduce him.
Okay. Hey Mduduzi.
Marlou.
It's nice to see you here.
Thanks, man. Nice to see you too.
Mduduzi.
Yes,
Nice to have you here.
Yes, thanks, man. Nice to be with you too.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's a privilege to have you on our show today. Really nice.
It is a privilege indeed.
And a warm welcome. Yeah.
Yes.
How are you doing?
No, I'm doing good. And yourself?
I'm well. A little bit cold today, but I think we'll manage.
We will indeed.
Our hearts are warm.
Our hearts are warm, yes. So let's introduce you to our viewers. This is Mduduzi, Mathebe, and Mduduzi works for the right arm of this ministry. He works for the right arm of the third angel's message for our health center called Veith. And he's been very much involved, well, previously in the kitchen. He makes amazing food, and he's involved in the food production, and he's somewhat of an evangelist himself. You know, once he starts, he cannot stop. One needs to limit him a little bit. So yeah, I think let's tell them what we're doing here today. Mduduzi is going to he's going to share his testimony with us today. And I for one, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And I've given my testimony before with my dad recently, end of last year, and it was the father-son episode, and it was a great blessing for me to give my testimony, you know, to share with the world what I've been through, you know, how God has led me. And yeah, I think a testimony, and I think Marlou still needs to do his testimony, hey? Hey, Marlou?
Yeah, it will happen some other time.
I think it's going to be next, very soon, very soon. And a testimony is a very good way to reach people and to spread the gospel. And Mduduzi, I've known you for some time now, and I mean, all three of us, we come from different walks of life.
Indeed.
You know, different backgrounds and different upbringings. And yeah, it would be very interesting to hear your story. And yeah, so if you look at I got a thought, you know, if you look at the sanctuary message, you look at the holy place, you look at the table of showbread and the altar of incense, and then on the other side you had the 7 lamps. The lamps signify Jesus being the light of the world. And what should we do? We should reflect the light of Jesus Christ. And I think that is key in terms of, your testimony, sharing that light and sharing how God has led us.
Yeah.
in
A
our
testimony is never about myself. It's not how good I am, how powerful I am.
Yeah.
It's how God worked in my life and how I allowed God to work in my life to change me for the glory of Him.
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to read out of Desire of Ages, very nice piece that I found. It says, our confession of His faithfulness is heaven's chosen agency for revealing Christ to the world. We are to acknowledge His grace as made known through the holy men of old, but that which will be most effectual is the testimony of our own experience. We are witnesses for God as we reveal in ourselves the working of a power that is divine. Every individual has a life distinct from all others and an experience differing essentially from theirs. God desires that our praise shall ascend to Him, marked by our own individuality. As I've said, these precious acknowledgements to the praise of the glory of His grace, when supported by a Christ-like life, have an irresistible power that works for the salvation of souls. Hey? Such a nice piece.
It is.
It is.
And it makes me think about another quote that says, we have nothing to fear for the future, except as we shall forget the way God has led us in the past.
Wow. Okay. So, and the other thing is when we look back at our lives, where everything started, we can only see now, when you look back, how He has led us through all the rocky and the dusty and the murky paths.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we can see the miracles that He's performed in our lives. You know what that does? What it did for me as well is it enhances and develops and nurtures our faith. It's been really very interesting. So could you have imagined, Mduduzi, sitting here today, and not necessarily specifically here, I guess, but being where you are now in your life? Could you have imagined being here from where you've been,
And
No.
sorry, just before you get into that, let's just have a quick prayer.
Oh, yes.
Our Heavenly Father, thank you for this wonderful opportunity that we have where we can listen to one of your servants, where he was in darkness once, but discovered the wonderful light. And I ask that you will be with us, that you will guide us, and that we will glorify you in this testimony. I pray this in Jesus' name alone. Amen.
Amen. Yes, you were still asking if I could have imagined myself sitting here one day. The truth is, not once.
Not once.
Yeah, I have imagined myself in many places in the past, but definitely not here or doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Yes, no, not at all. God works in mysterious ways. When you were speaking, I was reminded of a few verses. I am reminded now of one verse, I think it's in the book of Corinthians, where, it is said of the church that they are as written epistles, in other words, they are testimonies, for God, of course, it's like an evidence of what God can do. And I'm reminded also of, I think it was the rod of Aaron that was placed next to the testimony or next to the 10 Commandments, and it was said that it will be a token against, the rebellion of Korah and his followers, of course. And of course, in some place, the Lord says that, that very same rod will serve as means to eradicate, rebellion and murmuring, amongst the children of Israel. And I believe that is referring to the testimony that, one can give concerning God's might and God's love and all of that. I mean, these things, as you have said, they serve as tools, for the salvation of others. Because when they see, the work of God in the life of another, then maybe they can be convinced as to what God can do. Not that God needs someone to, testify on his behalf in order for him to be God. He is God regardless of that. But for our sakes, so that we can find ourselves in the places that we need to be in.
No, the testimony, it's so personal. It's so real. It can reach people that other methods can't reach. So I think I would like to hear more about your childhood, and maybe take us through that experience when you were younger, and then we can take it from there. Yeah.
No, hey, a testimony. It's always a little bit kind of a challenge to tell.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
I was born in KZN, in a township or village. I am not sure as to whether it is a township or a village because I was still young when I left KZN, but apparently it's called Kwandenges.
And just for our international viewers, that's the province of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa.
Yes.
Yeah, it's on the east side of South Africa. Yeah.
So when I was about the age, I think, of 6 years old, 4, 5, 6, around those ages, my mother had to move away from now KZN to Alwal North, which is in the Eastern Cape, province of Eastern Cape, of course. And of course, due to when I hear her side of the story, there were some issues between her and my father.
Yeah.
So she had to take me, pack her bags and live with me and go back home, which was in the Eastern Cape. That was now my mother's home. And that's where her mother was. So she took me back home, to her mother. And when we arrived in Alwal North, my granny was a domestic worker. She was working for a certain family that apparently this family, they were farmers before. And then they moved away from the farm to the small town, which is Alwal North. And when my mother went back home, she found my granny already staying in Alwal North with her employers.
Yeah.
She was staying in a rondavel, one-room rondavel, with a small cupboard and those old radios. I remember.
Yeah.
And there was
still remember them.
Yeah, there was a single bed in the corner there. And when we arrived, of course, she had to organize a mattress for myself and my mother. So myself and my mother, we were sleeping on the floor on the mattress.
Sorry, where was your dad at this point?
My dad at that time was, of course, still in KZN. We left him behind.
Okay.
Yes, so he
Still
was
living
still
there.
Yes, he was still in the KZN, and he did write some letters at a later stage. But yeah, that's another story. But he never really came to visit or anything of that kind.
Okay.
Yes, no. So yes, myself, my granny, and my mother, we stayed together. Of course, my mother was unemployed at the time. My granny was the only one who was employed, and if I'm not mistaken, I think she was getting around 50 rand or something as her salary.
And was that in a month, for a month?
That was in a month, yes.
So if we take it now, it would be like $2 a month.
Now, yeah. But this was when? This was
It
19...
it was late 80s into
Late
the
80s.
early 90s, around 88, 89, 90, 91.
Yeah.
Yes, around those.
Yeah,
those
it
years,
wasn't a lot, back then even.
Yeah, even back then it wasn't
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah.
If we can take it further back, maybe it
Correct.
would have, yes, because at that time, well, it could still do a couple of few things, maybe for her alone, but it was not that
It was a
much.
struggle.
Yes. So yeah, in addition to that, things were not that good in terms of the circumstances at home.
Yeah.
I remember there were times when my granny would bring us some leftovers to eat. She would bring these 2-liter containers, these ice cream containers, full of leftovers. There would be, you would see that this has been scraped from the plates of the masters.
Yeah.
There would be some bones, some beetroot here, this there, that mixture. And I could even remember very well, this is one detail that, it's a little bit funny, but at the same time, it's not. You would see a piece of bone with meat there, and who gets it first, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But of course, my granny and my mother, being parents, they would, of course, sacrifice it for me and so on. But nevertheless, my mother, on the other hand, she had her fair share in life. I believe that she had her own burdens, and own struggles that she had to deal with, And as a result, I believe that led her, to some other things as a form of medication. My mother drank a lot, and when I say drink, I'm referring to alcoholic beverages. And she also smoked cigarette, and at times when she has drunken too much of her, thingy, and smoked, she would have what we used to call, I believe it's an Afrikaans word, horis. It's some sort of fit, where she would.
Is it like epileptic?
It's more like, but it's not really epilepsy. It's but something of that kind, where she would, kind of cramp and stuff, and could not. There would be she would not be able to move and and do certain things like those. And my mother loved me a lot. I believe she still does, and I believe she'll always do. I mean, love me.
Where's your mother now?
She's still in Outer North.
Oh, she's still there?
Yeah, she's still in Outer North. So she would take me with her when she's going to have some drinks. And I remember we would be coming back together. Sometimes she would be carrying me. Sometimes I would be walking right next to her. And sometimes she would, she's... I don't like using the word drunk, given that it is my mother, but, for a lack of a better word, I think I would use it, she would be
inebriated,
drunk. And, yes, and we would intoxicated maybe, I don't know. And we would be coming back together, and sometimes she would then smoke a cigarette and she would get those fits and stuff like that, and, we would be next to the road. And, she would lay down there, and, I was a child. Around the ages of 6. And, I'm looking at your mother, helpless on the floor, you yourself not knowing what to do with the situation, as a child also not even knowing how to process the emotions, because there's definitely some emotions. It's your mother.
You don't know what is happening.
I don't know what is happening, what to do with this situation, whatever the case may be.
How long did it last usually? What I mean is the episodes.
Oh, the episodes. They would last, a few minutes,
Wow.
More than 5 minutes to 10 minutes sometimes, it would depend how much did she have of her drinks and stuff like that. I don't know, maybe the body also. I'm not sure as to what exactly, determined as to the length of the episodes themselves. Yes. But she would be laying there and I would, helpless myself, her being helpless and all of that. And I tend to believe that those are Satan's snares, to kind of, not, I wouldn't use the word traumatize, but somehow scar our minds and our hearts, as from childhood, and those things did really scar me,
of course,
because emotionally they had a great impact on me. Yes.
And how many people fall into that trap?
Same trap.
Because you didn't have a lot there, but there was always an opportunity to drink and to smoke. So Satan also caught your mother in that. It's...
And even though it's bad for you and this episode is going to happen, you still continue down that path.
Yes.
And that's so, looking back at my own life as well, you know it's bad for you. You know it could potentially even kill you, but you still do it.
You still do it, yes.
And that's how Satan gets you. Hey?
And that you have mentioned that, you don't have much, but you still do those things. The interesting thing about it is that, it's interesting how people would never come to you and say, listen, here is some money, go and buy yourself some food. Because my mother, it was her friends who were buying for her,
wow.
the drinks.
Oh, okay, yeah.
She had friends. I remember visiting, most of her friends. Sometimes she would invite it in one of her friends' houses. Most of them they were domestic workers because we were staying in a white area, of course, neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, we would go there and stay in this lady's house, and this lady would be buying some alcohol and stuff like that. But I don't know, maybe it did happen at some point, but I don't remember them saying, here's some money, go buy yourself some groceries or, do this or do that. But they were always willing to buy her alcohol, and stuff like that. And cigarettes and all of those things, to an extent that she would be leaving their houses still having something to smoke and stuff like that because they were providing. That's just how Satan works, you know,
Yeah.
to destroy us.
It's more important to you, you know, when you look at certain beggars as well on the streets, you try and help them. You give them some money, and 90%, 80% of the time they go and buy alcohol.
It's true.
They're not even filled. They're not even they're still hungry, but they go and buy alcohol or drugs.
And the illusion Satan has created that is going to make your circumstances better. You're going to get past that hurt or misery or whatever that horrible circumstances is in your life.
But it's just temporary.
It's just temporary.
Yeah.
You forget about
And we
it for
know
that
this.
few seconds,
Yeah.
and then you're back exactly where you were.
Yeah.
I mean, think of my mother. I don't believe that my mother was careless and uncaring and unloving or whatever the case may be, or she just wanted to throw her life away. I believe that, you know, it's either, sometimes it might be for pleasure, because some people drink for the sake of pleasure.
Correct.
Because they find it pleasurable or whatever
Escape
it is enjoyable.
or whatever you just want to escape from.
You know,
your
but
struggles.
most of the people, it's escapism. It's a form of medication. It's a drug. That's what it is, of course. You know, but somehow they are trying to numb a pain.
Yeah.
You know, that they are carrying in their hearts.
Yeah.
You know, so my mother, sometimes I tend to believe that she too, you know, maybe she had some traumas from her childhood, or, you know, from maybe even my father, because according to her side of the story, my father at some point became abusive.
Yeah.
So I'm not by any means justifying, you know, drugs and stuff like that, but I'm saying sometimes there might be reasons, even though they might be not that valid, but there might be reasons why they end up being in those places. I mean, she was trying to medicate whatever pain she had, but what she did not know is that she was causing another pain with me. You know, she was causing another problem with me, because all of those things impacted me greatly, to an extent that I ended up, at first it was pain, you know, but then you start asking yourself questions such as, why is my mother doing this to herself? Why is my mother doing this to me? Why is my mother doing this to us?
Yeah.
You know, and
you
eventually
didn't understand. You were innocent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And eventually that pain, you know, becomes anger, because now it changes form, because now you end up becoming angry towards her, because I ended up becoming angry towards her to say, you know what, maybe she doesn't care. You know, maybe she doesn't love me. Maybe she doesn't love herself, for that matter. You know, maybe that's why she's doing the things that she's doing. So you end up, you know, there's some sort of anger that builds up, and eventually that anger becomes hatred.
Yeah.
You know, to say, you know what, I hate her. You know, I hate her for doing what she's doing with herself. I hate her for doing what she's doing with me, you know. But then now, from her, you now start looking around, you know, to say, but, okay, my mother has a problem, but there's people around us. Why are they not helping?
Yeah.
You see, now it's a build-up. Why are they not helping?
Where's the love?
I mean, where's the
care?
love, you know? I mean, at first, you know, my resentment was towards my mother, my hatred was towards my mother, then it moved from my mother towards the white people, because we were in the white neighborhood. And I mean, I could see that they are well off, of course, from a surface level, you know, to what I see. You see, according to my own judgment, they have houses, big houses, they have, you know, everything.
Cars, and you're getting the scraps.
Yes, why am I getting scraps for that matter? You see, in my mind, even if it was my granny's choice to take the scraps, you know, because I don't know how did we end up with scraps. I was not there in the house when she was gathering the scraps. I don't know if they were given to her or she chose to take the scraps because maybe she didn't have the confidence or the boldness to you know, approach her employers or whatever the case may be. But in my eyes, I see what I see, and I judge based on what I see at the moment. And I'm like, okay, right, they are giving us scraps for that matter. You know, we are staying in this. I mean, we had one room rendezvous, small one. They had storerooms full of you know, mowing machines and stuff like
tools
that.
And
nice. There was a 2-room there. I think it was a 2-room house that was a storeroom with the toilet. Why don't we go and stay there? And they make the rendezvous the storeroom. So now, all of those things, they, you know, build up inside of you, and then you end up saying, you know what? I hate these people. You know, I hate these people because look how they treat us. They don't care about us. They don't love us. You know, they treat us, you know, in your own mind, you know, they treat you Western animals. Because I mean, their dogs are staying in the houses, are eating the best food and stuff like that. But look at me. You know? And then I ended up having this anger inside of me, you know, towards my mother, towards, you know, my mother. Why did she leave my father? Why is she doing this? Why that and that? And then it was now towards the white community, you know. And then we moved away from the white community. You know, my granny's employers passed away, you know, but before we get there, now there was also an element of rebellion, you know, because now you're like, you know what, I'm going to find my own way in life. You know, I mean, I was, I think at that time about the ages of 7, 8 years, you know. There were guys who were staying in the streets, you know, in town there, you know, we used to call them street kids, or beggars or whatever you know. And young guys and so on. And these guys would see me when I go to school because I attended school in the black community or neighborhood, you know. So they would go see me when I go to school and come back, and they would approach me, and eventually they befriended me. And as a result, you know, I would now and again come back from school and go and stay with them, and they would be smoking glue. You know, there was a place it was a game center, you know, there were games in there, so and stuff like that. We would go there and spend some time there. And eventually they became my friends, you know. And
can I just interject? You know, so it sounds like your upbringing. There was no Bible studies or Bible, you know, stories, and you didn't live. So you almost felt like you were in a bubble. You know, where do you go? You can't go to God because you don't know God.
No.
You know, so you felt that, well, I have to find that, you know, there's no love here. That's how Satan works. He suppresses. And then when he suppresses, there's no way out. So you go, you choose drugs, you choose a bad life. And that's sad, eh?
Remember the medication thingy, you know, benumbing the pain. You know, I am also now finding ways to numb my pain, you know, because now if I'm with these guys, at least for a moment, I'm happy, you know. I don't have to think about everything that is happening at home. You know, I'm playing games, I'm sniffing glue, you know, I'm for a moment, I am happy for that.
And Satan gives you that happiness. Sorry, I'm hopping on that, but he gives you that, and you think it. I had the same type of situation. I didn't have that type of life, you know, upbringing, but also I wanted to find happiness, and that's where I found it, and it gave me happiness, but it was a false.
It's actually not happiness at all.
No.
You know, it's not happiness at all. It's some sort of illusion. It's, you know, you are deceived. You know, you believe a lie that you are happy, but you are not. Because immediately when you leave that place where you are smoking or doing the things that you are doing and going back home, you are again faced with reality. It has not gone anywhere. It's still there.
Same with drugs. You do your drugs, you feel good, you come down, you're back to where you were, even worse.
You see? Now all you can do is seek for a much more stronger drug, you know, that will last a little bit longer. You see? So yes, then at that point in time, my granny's employers passed away. That is now, you know, the lady that, you know, was my granny's employer, of course. And her children built a shack for my granny. You know, they built a shack for my granny, and they gave my granny the shack. We didn't know where to put the shack. We didn't have a place to put the shack. You know, we took the shack, and my mother went to the township and to find out, you know, if there's a space.
Inquire about the space,
And there was a Zionist church. This church actually had a space, a big space, and they said, listen, we are willing to accommodate you here. You can put your shack here and stay here. You know? And we went and stayed there. We went and put our shack there. Now I was in the black neighborhood. And in the black neighborhood, again, I was faced with the same challenges. It was not different. I mean, there were black people who were also well off. You know? My very family was, to some extent, you know, they had some things that they could manage. To some extent, they were not rich, so to say. But you know, and there were challenges. You know, family-wise, I was labeled as a bastard. You know,
are we talking larger family? So this is not just your immediate, your mom and
not
so
the
your
immediate
cousins.
family. I'm talking about the extended family, the cousins and.
So they were there as well in that area.
Yes, they are there. I mean, I had the uncle, my mother's brother. Those are the people who were close to us, who used to come and visit us and stuff like that. And there were other, you know, extended family, other uncles and so on, and nieces and cousins and all of that. And look, nobody came to me and told me that you are a bastard because, you came through the mother, we don't know your father, whatever the case may be. But the sad part is, when people speak things, these things would leach out, and eventually they will reach your ears, even though I was a child, but some of these things did reach my ears, even through my mother sometimes, yes, and sometimes through my granny. My granny loved me greatly, and she would tell me some of these things to say, listen, hang on, don't worry. That was the closest person that was amongst my family members. My granny was the closest to me, you see. So these things also are now adding, to the hatred, to the fire, to say, you know what? Actually, nobody cares. It's not a matter of white or black, because even the black people are treating us the same way. They are not assisting in any way.
I'm on my own in this world.
That was the conclusion. I came to that conclusion to say, you know what? I'm on my own. Nobody loves me. Nobody cares, And there's a little bit of a low esteem on the other hand, because you are not fitting in anywhere. You are this black sheep, an outcast, And on the other hand, there is no one who cares or loves you. And I know sometimes we might say that, but some people are playing, the victim, or people are, self-pity and stuff like that. And
they use it.
I was a child.
Yeah.
You need to understand that I was a child, 6 years, 7 years. I mean, what could I have done? And I mean, even intellectually speaking, I couldn't reason from cause to effect. I couldn't put 1 + 1 and come up to 2.
This was your world. This is all you knew.
This is my world. And I am at that point in time, what still functions the most in my mind is the emotions.
Yeah.
Everything is taken through emotions, or it's seen through emotions.
Your first 7 years, because my son is 5, you try to really just groom them for life. For the first 7 years is very important for the stimulation, brain stimulation.
You see those kind of things. And those things are literally, distorting your whole view of what life is. And that again is Satan's work.
And Satan's getting you exactly where he wants you to be. And he wants to keep you there.
Exactly, and nobody is doing anything to help. I mean, my mother, due to a lack of knowledge, because I believe that, as I've said in the beginning, it's not that my mother didn't care or didn't love me or anything, but due to a lack of knowledge, as the scripture says, she did not know better. She was raised in a certain way, she knew a certain kind of life, and that was the best that she could offer. You see,
people perish due to lack of knowledge.
Yes, you see. And the same it is, I believe, even with the people that I ended up hating, they knew what they knew, and that was the best thing that they could offer or that they could do, And the same,
And how important is it to evangelize? This is the reason why we have to do it, so to give people that extra hope, that alternative to the life they actually
live, you know. So eventually that became some sort of a core belief about, number one, about the world itself. I had a core belief that the world was cold, the world was unloving, the world is literally everybody for himself.
Which is to a degree correct.
Which is to a degree correct. And about myself also, I had some distorted core beliefs, to say, what, nobody, I am nobody. I am useless. If nobody cares about me, nobody does anything for me, then what's the use? And then at some point, I befriended, the thugs of the community. They befriended me, actually. There was a guy, he passed away just to protect his identity and, of course, his family. I will not mention his, real name. But there was a guy, tall guy, who started, I will say for, just to protect his family, I will say Sam. His name, his identity, to protect it. So Sam befriended me. And Sam was a thief. He was specializing in housebreaking. And Sam would now and again come with stolen goods, and he would ask me to hide them. And I remember sometimes he would bring games. We still had those games that you put what is this thing now? Cartridge. You see those?
Those balls where you have to put the shapes in?
Those old,
No, it connects to the TV, but
TV
it's
game.
like the small block that the
like
game is on, and you insert it into
Yes, those small,
So he stole...
Yes, he would. I remember one time he brought that, he stole it, and then, so he would bring small things and I would hide them for him and so on. And Sometimes he would give me money and so on, you know. At the time, as I said, I was still small, about 8, 9 years, you know, and so on. 10, I was not really into many things.
But that's where you found love, eh?
Yes, that's where I found love.
with
And
these guys,
these
yeah.
guys, in fact, that also was not really love, because if you love someone, you would not,
course
you know,
not.
give them things that they would destroy him or
Yeah.
her. But in our perception as human beings, that is love.
Yeah.
You know, so
You felt wanted.
I felt wanted. I felt appreciated. I felt, you know, to some extent, I perceived some kindness from this stranger. You
Yeah.
know? And he was not the only one. I mean, most of the criminals, they have a way of luring in the young ones. I don't know why, but somehow they tend to have a way of getting to the young ones. To nurture them, to mold them, and shape them.
Yeah.
In the ways
Because they're moldable.
Yes.
They're still young.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know.
It sounds
So-
like, sorry, it just gave me a picture of the serpent of old, you know,
Yes.
and Eve.
Yes,
You
they
know,
know
how,
that-
how he lured her in. He must have been this magnificent creature, you know, loving, come across as loving. Sure.
You are vulnerable at that stage.
You are.
Really. You know, you don't have a strong moral compass to, to like kind of say no, or whatever the case may be, and you are in need. And these guys, they somehow nurtured me. You know, I grew amongst everyone around me who was older than me. You know,
Yeah.
some of them, they were 5 years older, 10 years older. You know, others, they were very older than me, and they would take me in when they go to their shacks to smoke or whatever the case may be. I would be sitting there amongst them, and I would be listening to their conversations, and I would be, and stuff like that.
And they treated you well, eh? They never hurt you or anything like that.
Yeah, not once.
Okay.
So to me, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, right, these guys,
Yeah.
they are really there. You know, I think also a lack of a father figure sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they became my fathers. You know, they raised me to some extent. They taught me, how to defend myself. In fact, sometimes when I'm being bullied or something like that, I would go straight to them, and
Yeah.
they'd come and stand up for me and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the age of 14, I was now, I myself, I was a full-blown thug in a way. You know, I was now already smoking weed. I was already a drunkard myself, and these guys I remember very well, they would take me. And I mean, some of them, they really genuinely loved me. They genuinely liked me. They thought that what they were doing was good. You know, they thought that they were raising me in the right way, you know, according to their belief of what life should be, or their perception of what life should be. I mean,
this is what we've been given in life,
Yes.
and we should take from those who have more.
Yes.
That's how it should be almost. Yeah.
you see, remember that we said due to a lack of knowledge, these guys, that's what they knew.
Yeah.
That's the best they could have given to me. They didn't know anything better than what they gave.
I get
the
it.
way they were raised as well, and so on. So they nurtured me. They groomed me. They raised me in a way, and they would take me sometimes. At that time, you couldn't go into a club or a tavern when you are under the age of 18.
Yeah.
It was still strict at that time. Not now. Now you can go anywhere, whether you are 15 or 14. You see. But at that time, 18 was 18. There were those guys who are standing by the door, and stuff like that. And but these guys, they would find a way to, somehow smuggle me.
Use their power, or whether
Sometimes they would
bribe
use
them?
the power of persuasion. Sometimes they
okay.
would, and stuff like that. But somehow they would smuggle me into the tavern.
Okay.
And sometimes we would sit outside the tavern and they would hide me because I was the youngest. I remember very well, in most of the taverns, I was, the youngest there amongst them. And I would drink with them and come back home drunk and stuff like that. And started stealing myself, house breaking. I started, I ended up specializing in robbery. That was my crime. That was what I specialized in. So I wouldn't really say I was a hardened criminal. I don't think I had reached that stage, because I never really went as far as murder, rape. Of course, maybe I might have attempted it a few times. Then, robbery was a thing, street robbery specifically, and sometimes you would take chances with shops and stuff like that. And yeah, that's what we specialized in and so on.
Was there ever resistance, if I may ask, from the people you were robbing and so forth? Was there ever, that type of
Here is
struggle?
the thing, and this is the point I wanted to bring across. In my childhood, what happened is I was damaged. I must use the word damaged emotionally and so on. The trauma, and that contributed to the anger and the hatred. And then in my criminal lifestyle, I had to kind of sear my conscience, because there were resistance, many of them.
Yeah.
And when there is a resistance, you have to use some force.
Yeah.
Sometimes I remember sometimes we had evil ways of doing it. You would take a brick and hit someone on the head with it, so that person can fall down and you can take what you want to take.
Okay, yeah.
There were a lot of ways that we used. Sometimes with knives, you would stab the person and so on. And at some stage, we were introduced to guns and stuff like that.
Sure.
So, so there were a lot of ways that we or things that we did to get the money, and stuff like that. I mean, sometimes I remember some of the things of the most wicked things that one had to do, where you would rob an old person. I remember this old granny whom we had to rob, and I remember pulling her because now you have to surprise the person, so you are coming from behind and you grab her from behind like she had a purse. We didn't grab her, I grabbed the purse, and as I was pulling the purse, she was holding on to her purse. Now you had to pull, a little bit harder, and as you pull harder, she fell, and I remember she fell with the back of her
on her head.
On her head, yes, and those kind of things.
Yeah, I hear you.
And those things, they you have to some extent, you have to harden your heart. You have to say, you know what, I don't care. Whether I hurt someone or I don't. So somehow you have to get rid of compassion. You have to get rid of sympathy.
You harden your own heart,
Yes, you have to harden your own heart.
By repetitive action.
And there were also, gang fights amongst ourselves in the neighborhood sometimes and stuff like that. I remember there was a year where I became an enemy towards the very guys that I called my friends, because of all the hatred and all of that. I was a loner in a sense, I grew up alone to some extent, and that was still in me. And sometimes I would, have funny behaviors, even towards the guys, and I would like, you know what, I don't care, I don't need you anyway, you see. So I made a lot of enemies. And there would be a little bit of wars or fights, and stuff like that, and so on. And so I would, you have to build up some kind of courage. You have to some military kind of mindset. Because you have to fend for yourself. You have to stand. Sometimes you are attacked by 10 or 5 people. And you have to defend yourself, against 5 or 10 people. You have to fight. You can't run away. You can't cry because they don't care whether you cry or not. And if you run away, they will chase you. They will find you and they will do what they want to do. So you have to stand your ground. You have to fight. And you have to fight viciously. You have to be like an animal. You have to give it all. In order for you to survive. Sometimes they have knives. At one point I woke up in the hospital. I was beaten to a pulp. Of course. And there were many cases like those. But the point is, it changes. It takes away you become inhumane.
Yeah.
It takes away your humanness or that humanity aspect of who we are supposed to be. And
What was the point where a shift started happening?
In 2006, I got arrested. Not really arrested, but I got sentenced. There were many other incidences where I got arrested, but and then at one point I remember I got sentenced to 3 years, but it was 3 years suspended for 10 months or something like that. So I didn't really serve time in prison because I think it was for housebreaking.
Okay.
So was this after school?
I dropped out of school.
Okay.
Yes, due to this lifestyle as well. So at around standard 8, we We used to call them standard.
Standard 8. That's like 16 years old, eh? Somewhere around standard 8.
16, 17, around there. Yes. You see, I dropped out of school because where I was now in a village. They had to take me away from Alwal North, and they placed me in a village called Ilinge in Queenstown in the Eastern Cape as well, because there was some issues, as I was saying. There was a lot of fight, with my friends. There was, at some point I was beaten by a community and so on. So my mother took me to a witch doctor, but long story short, it was said that I was not going to make that year. So my mother, to protect me or to kind of take me away from the place of my death, because apparently I was going to die that year.
The witch doctor obviously predicted this.
Yes, witch doctor predicted those things and so on. And the community as well, they were like, you know what, this boy is not going to make it, and so on and all of those things. Even my friends, sometimes some of my friends who were not really criminals, they had to distance themselves from me because now I was becoming something else altogether and so on. And then they took me to Queenstown, and I did some things there as well. I remember robbing drug dealers there, and I was becoming worse, and I was becoming more bold to do things, in the criminal arena.
And just before we get to the part where the change happened, there's so many kids who see being a part of a gang as something that's cool, something that they want to do. And it's been glamorized so much on the movies, but is there something that you can tell younger viewers, kids, who isn't on a right space in their life, who wants to be a part of a gang? Is it worth it?
How do we protect them?
I like the fact that you brought that point up. Well, in Queenstown, I did what I did, and then I had to come back home and so on. And then there was a point in my life, just before I got sentenced, where I realized that actually I was not happy. You are not happy, every weekend when weekend approaches, you are anxious about where are you going to get the money to drink. During the week you are constantly anxious, where are you going to get the money to smoke, where are you going to get the money to do this.
Never have that peace.
You don't have peace. You are constantly agitated. You are constantly devising ways and means to get some money or to make some money to please that one, and please that one, because you also have to please the very same friends that you call friends, because sometimes you come amongst them and you are not going to smoke what they smoke because you don't have money. You are not to drink what they drink because you didn't contribute anything. So you must go and do something, in order for you to be regarded as part and parcel of the gang. And apart from that, also sometimes you get disrespected to an extent that you now have to go and stab someone and do something in order for you to earn respect. In a way, there's nothing happy about that environment. You are constantly bombarded with all kinds of things that you don't want to do in reality, but you have to do them because that's the identity you have assumed. That's the identity you have taken upon yourself.
So the humanity side, all of us, no matter where we are in our life, the Holy Spirit still works with us, and you still yearn. It sounds like you were you were always yearning for peace. Yearning for that.
You are longing for something better.
Yeah.
At that point in my life, I was like, this can't be it. This can't be all that is in life. There must be something better, But at that time, again, a lack of knowledge. What is truth? I like that. Not knowing what the truth is, not knowing what really constitutes life, not knowing what really, why am I here? Not having a purpose or whatever the case may be, for existence. And as a result, you are trying to find the purpose in all kinds of things that are out there. You are trying to find the reason of things. You are trying to determine what is truth, why am I here? Why am I doing what I'm doing?
Why do I exist?
Why do I exist? You know? And at that time, of course, you have convinced, or in my case, I had convinced myself that life is all about making money and enjoying your money.
Do what thou wilt.
Do what thou wilt. I need money and money and money and a lot of money, so that I can enjoy life.
You can find your peace.
Yes. So without money, I can't be happy. I need to be drunk all the time. There was a time I was drinking from Monday to Monday, literally 7 days a week. 7 days, 30 days a month, whatever the case may be. I must be constantly drunk and be constantly. And when you get sober, you are now burdened with guilt, you are burdened with shame because of all the things you did and said when you were drunk. So you are not happy. You are there is no peace for the wicked.
I remember
you are constantly.
that. I remember.
And then you start drinking to forget about the bad things you did, and then you do the bad things again. So it's just this vicious cycle that you're a part of.
No end, my friend. You know, and I was like, okay, right, there must be an end. Then I got arrested. I got sentenced to 8 years to prison. And then
was that for robbery?
It was aggravated robbery. You know, so not only did we threaten the guy, we stabbed the poor guy.
Okay.
And yes, so, and it was a simple, you know, what in the street they would call a very light kind of crime.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
And I remember well, I was actually supposed to be sentenced to 15 years.
Wow.
But the state lawyer that I had, he did his best, and they gave me 8 years.
Wow. 15 years isn't that? It's not life. Life is 25 years.
Yeah, no, it's 25
15
years.
is
Apparently,
it's a long time.
Minimum for aggravated robbery is 10 years, and then maximum 15 years upwards.
Okay.
You see, yes. So I was in prison. Then in prison, at some point in my life, of course, in the past, I had joined prison gangs. You know, I was arrested in Queenstown and trialed there for about 6 months. And I joined the prison gang, which they call 26, and there's most 26, 27, whatever
28.
it is, yes, 28. But based on the gangsters, or according to the gangsters, there's only 3 gangs in prison. It's 26, it's 27, and 28. 26
they're very different.
26 and 27 is the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost the same. 27 is actually the father to 26. Yeah, 26 is founded by the 27s.
Yeah.
Yes, so the 27s, in a way, they serve under the authority of the 27s, in a way.
Yes.
You see?
I've been through, I've had friends in gangs, and I know they go, you know, the one is money driven, the other one is, there's a lot of things, I don't want to go into it. But
and then there's a lot of others, Air Force, Big Five, but those are not really, you know, acknowledged as gangs, you know, by these 3 gangs. That is 26, 27, and 28, you know. Yeah. So anyway, I was in this 26 gang, and again, I had to work my way up, you know, with the ranks, you know. I had to earn my respect. I had also in prison, you need to do certain things in order to be respected, especially if you are in a gang. You know,
prove yourself.
To some extent, you know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you are going to be treated as a nobody, you know, and things can happen to you. You might be raped, a lot of things might happen, you know.
There's a ranking system in the prisons, hey?
In gangsterism, there's ranking, you know, of course, system. It's more like a military structure. That's how they have structured the system itself. You know, they have copied the system of the military system, and then they have somehow twisted it here and there, and they've made their own system. You know, but anyway, I was there, you know, I had to stab people whilst I was in prison. I had to do certain things and so on. And I ended up being on it's second last rank, if I can say so.
Wow.
They call them the privates, you know, the number 1s. And then above them, it's the general, and then it's Maukwezi and so on. Those are the 2 last ranks.
They're the 28, so.
That's the 26.
Oh, they're the 26.
That's the 26, yeah. And I must say, the system itself, it's the same system as the system that is used in the secret societies.
I was going to say.
Same.
It's the same.
In fact, it's the same principles. It's the same master.
Yeah.
You know, you have to shed blood, you have to make sacrifices, you have, you know, all of those things. There's secrecy. For example, these things that I'm sharing with you now, you know, there's a risk that someone might come and say, you have spilled our secrets, you know, we need to stab you, we need to do this, and all of those kind of things. So there's a secrecy, you know, within the gang itself. You know, the doctrine, for lack of a better word, you know, the gang doctrine must be kept within the gang ranks. It can't go out of the gang.
Yeah.
The minute
there's a secrecy involved.
Yes, you leak that out, you know, it's a risk. And there's a lot of things that happened. In fact, at some point, I hope that by God's grace, you know, one can find an opportunity to speak about gang itself and everything that happens there, and so that, you know, you can show specifically the youth, you know, how that is Satanism in its
Yeah.
in its purest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we can have an episode like that and delve into it and just show how bad it is and can be, and what is the opposite to it. What's the alternative, and what's the better way out of it?
It's satanic. There is even signs that they use in secret societies. They use the same signs in gangsterism, such as the Star of David, and all of those things.
So in a way, it's protected.
Yes, it's protected.
The mafia is the same type of system.
Yes. You know? And being in the rank that I was in, you get to know all of the secrets, because you are, you literally, the gang is upon your shoulders, in a way, you see. So yeah, even the sun thing, sun worship.
Sun worship.
That's what actually 26 is about. They call themselves in Afrikaans sun up or sunrise or whatever. It's Mpumalanga. In other words, they work when the sun rises. They do their things when the sun rises. As you can see, this tattoo as well, it's a rising sun.
Ah, there we go.
You see, it's sun worship. That's what it is. You see.
Yeah.
So you see,
it's Baal worship. It goes back to Baal worship.
It's Baal worship. You see.
Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new under the sun. You see. So at that point, the Spirit of the Lord was working, like strongly in my heart. I started seeing that there was nothing good about the life that I was living. As I've said,
Do you remember that point where that happened? It's very difficult sometimes to remember. But
here's the strange thing. I remember both times. It happened twice. It happens before I got sentenced. I remember very well, when I was like, you know what, this is it. I remember even sharing it with one of my friends, saying that, you know what, my friend, for me, of course, at that point, I didn't know anything about, Christianity in a way, you know. So I was like, there must be another phase in life that I need to move into.
Explore.
Explore. This is not it.
So you've hit rock bottom.
Yes.
Because that's everyone even myself, it's a different rock bottom than yours, but I also reached rock bottom, and there's only one way up, and you have to explore.
You are tired. You are just tired of this kind of life. There's nothing, there's no progress, there's no way forward. It's like you are settling in one place. You are thinking about the same thing every day. You are doing the same thing like weekly for the same reason, and there's no growth. There's nothing in it.
It's a metaphor of the bubble again. You want to get out of that bubble.
Yeah, you want to get out of that bubble. So in prison, it happened again. I remember I was sitting outside. Almost in prison, there's a
yard.
Open section, the yard. I was sitting there, and it was Sunday, and there was a church in the hall.
Okay.
And I remember the conviction, not really, I wouldn't say the conviction, but that impression, strong impression and desire to say, go to church. Go to church. And I went, but that was the last time I ever put my feet in the church, in prison, of course. Because when I came out, then at some point the gangs had to summon me. And and they had to convince me that I cannot be a Christian and a gang at the same time. It doesn't work unless I go into the church with a secret agenda, either to try and manipulate the people who come for money, for drugs.
Satanic to the highest degree.
It lets me think about what was the society of Jesus created for?
Exactly.
Why was the Jesuits created?
The Jesuit order.
Yes. So unless you are going in that church for our purposes, you are going to, execute our plans. You do not go there to be saved. No. You can go there to, earn their respect and their trust, and then use them to bring in maybe weight into prison or stuff like that and so on. But you can't be a Christian. Because the principles of Christianity and the principles of gangsterism are completely the opposite.
Negate each other.
You see? I mean, at some point, you have to stab someone, and then Christianity says you can't do that. At some point, you have to rob someone. Christianity says you can't do that. At some point, you have to do certain things. And mind me, those things in gangsterism are it's the identity of gangsterism. That's what gangsterism is all about. For example, if you go back into its history, and you study or listen to what they say it was formed for. It was formed to rob, specifically the whites. It was a political thing, to say we have to take back from the whites what they have taken from us, to rob farmers specifically, and so on. So as much as it is satanic and so on, but somehow they tried to mix it with politics and all of those things and so on. Yes. And also in prison, they say they were fighting for their rights. So they formed those organized groups so that if the wardens are mistreating the inmates, then they would stab a warden or they would do something to get the attention of the authorities so that they can be able to say, listen, we don't like the food you are giving us, or we don't like the clothes. But when you look, on the other hand, it really has nothing to do with fighting for the rights of inmates. It really has nothing to do with fighting for the rights of blacks, for that matter. It's Satanism.
From the outside, gangsterism looks like they're just thugs. Yeah. There's no order, there's nothing, but it's actually an organized structure and system.
Yeah. It looks like a lot of rebels who doesn't want to adhere to the law and the organization of or the rules of an organization, but now they form their own organization with its own rules.
The interesting part is they would never allow you to call them gangs.
Oh, is it?
What do you call them? They don't use that term. They call themselves organization. That's what they call them. It's very interesting. When you go to prison gangs, they do not call themselves gangs. So anyway, I was then taken out of the church, and then in 2010, I got released from prison. And then I was now outside, of course, but I was still a criminal. I was still doing the things that I was doing. You know, I got employed by a certain construction company. And I worked for them, and I moved from Marlou to Johannesburg, and still doing the things that I was doing, still smoking drugs. I was into Mendrex. That was.
But did you go back to crime after sentence?
Crime it was part and parcel of who I am. I mean, if we think of, you know, what is crime? I mean, if I am drunk in the tavern and somebody provokes me and I beat that person into a pulp, that's crime.
It's crime. What does the Bible say? What is crime?
Exactly. You don't have to go and steal or rob. It's wrong. You know, if your mother speaks to you in the household and you disrespect her and you treat her badly, that's crime. That's what it is. You know. So I was still doing, but even though at this point I was not really into robberies and stuff, you know. We at some point sold drugs, Mendrex itself, with some of the friends that I made. We at some point sold fake clothes and stuff like that. So in some way, you know, we were kind of improving our criminal tactics and stuff like that. And then we were getting somewhere up there. I don't know where exactly, but wherever we were going. So I ended up being in Johannesburg, and me ending up being in Johannesburg, I was really tired of the life that I was living. I was really tired of my own township itself. And I wanted to just leave. And I remember I packed my clothes in those pick and pack green bags and a ShopRite plastic. And I went and hiked, and I was gone to Johannesburg. And I didn't really know Johannesburg at the time. I only knew Pinville, a specific area of Pinville, where I went to visit the friends once. And then, you know, I went and I walked around. I found a friend of mine who was there. And then, you know, we were staying in drug dens, you know, in a place called Mvakwesporo in Kliptown. So we would sleep from one drug den to another because we didn't have a place to stay in. And at some point, we rented a shack. We were paying, I think, 200 Rand a month. At this point, we were selling leather wax. The guy was very good in making leather sandals and stuff, and he taught me to do the same. And of course, again, to protect the identity of the guy and stuff like that, I will not mention his name, but he was very good in that, you know. And we worked together, and that's how we kind of survived, you know. And and I remember now in this shack again, God, you know, appearing again. There was a Bible in the shack, and at some point I would read the Bible, and the book of Psalms.
How did it appear? So that's for me a big moment.
Look, we were smoking drugs, so now and again we would go through the shack. You know, we would take some, you know, irons there and stuff like that. We would sell those things and, you know, get some money to buy some drugs and do stuff like that. And then as we were going through the things in the shack, there was a Bible. You know, I don't remember exactly whether it was in a wardrobe or where was it, but there was a Bible in the house, and I found the Bible. Started reading the Bible. The book of Psalms caught my attention.
Psalms, wow.
The book of Psalms, yes, because of my criminal lifestyle. I was also a fan of rap.
Yeah.
Rap music or
Yeah.
hip hop. Yes, at that time it was called rap, rhythm and poetry. Now they have called it hip hop and many other things.
So does that actually have an influence on your life as well, listening to that type of music?
Yes, my friend, it does. I mean, if you think of it, we used to call ourselves thugs. We didn't call ourselves tsotsis, and the reason we called ourselves thugs, it is because we were influenced by Tupac, who called himself, or who rather, who advocated thug life. Of course, there's a lot of stories, we are not going to get into that. Why did he call himself, or why did he advocate thug life? What did he mean by saying that? We studied those things because those were our role models.
It frames you, hey?
Yes, they
music.
framed our thinking,
You were more into hip hop and rap.
Yes,
rapper,
rap,
and
yeah.
I was more into heavy metal.
Exactly.
And if you remember that one story about the one kid who listened to Slipknot, which is a very vicious heavy metal band,
Yes.
and he went to school and he killed one of his bullies, with a sword, because he listened. That's all he listened to, and he was a young kid. So it's really important that we understand how it affects us. Wow.
We can leave the music itself, that is now the instruments, and say, okay, right, let's argue the argument. The instruments are not wrong.
Yeah.
Just for argument's sake, But the philosophy that is advocated there, the philosophy that is taught through those songs, because those are rebels at heart. They call themselves outlaws, they call themselves thugs, they call themselves gangsters. They teach in their music that you shouldn't care what the next person thinks.
Yeah.
They teach in their music that if a person provokes you, shoot him, kill
Yeah.
him. They teach
Yeah.
in their music that even
It's
your
all
very
licentiousness and sexual.
Yes,
And what you behold, you become.
You
So if
become.
you sit with that in your ears constantly the whole day,
Yeah.
eventually that's going to rub off.
It's your
And you're
idol.
gonna
It becomes your idol, eh?
Yes, that's how we lived our
Yeah.
life. We lived our life based on the philosophy of rap music. We everything we did was based on the philosophy of rap music.
And just to take it one step further,
Yeah.
is I was thinking of Hollywood earlier as well. That's the same system. You sign a contract where you sell your soul. You have to belittle the Son of God. That's in some of the contracts, and that just goes to show, Eminem and all these rappers out there. They all sell Satanism.
Yes,
was
it
in
Henry?
disguise.
I forget who is this guy who was a guitarist and stuff like that, who said that they are evangelists.
Oh,
Their
yeah?
music is preaching.
Yes.
That's what they do.
Who's that? Bob Marley?
No. I forgot the guy's name now. Hendrix or something like that.
Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix.
There we go.
It was Jimi Hendrix
Yeah.
who said that, you see. So it's not just music, that music in itself has a way of changing how you think. It
Yeah.
molds your mindset.
Yeah.
Yes. You
There's
see.
even, what you call it, linguistic programming almost. There's backtracks in it that talks
Yes.
to, what we're talking
subliminal
about.
messages
That's
and all
it,
of that.
subliminal.
In fact, the very instruments themselves, they affect, your brain waves,
Yeah.
to an extent that they somehow numb down your reasoning abilities. They numb down your moral compass and stuff like that. And you have to do that yourself when you are listening to that music.
Yeah.
Because in order for
Yeah.
you to sit and listen to someone swearing at his mother, you have to convince yourself that there's nothing wrong about swearing at your mother.
Yeah. I remember watching movies and listening to this music and listening to blasphemy on the television. And what I used to do is, in the beginning, it was, I don't like it, but it's okay, I'm still going to watch the movie, it's a funny movie. And later on, you start, you
silence your conscience.
Yeah,
You look over it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. You accept it for what it is, and you start laughing at their jokes, and it's terrible.
You start finding pleasure in it.
You
start
do.
becoming part and parcel of it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So getting back to the story now of the Bible and
finding
in the shack.
Bible.
I read the Bible. The Bible caught my attention. This book was amazing for me, and I wanted more of the book. And even though I didn't know much about the book and its origins and everything like that, but the book.
You enjoyed Psalms,
I
eh?
enjoyed
Because of
it,
the way it's written.
Yeah, and mind me, in the past, I didn't really love the book because there was some point in my life where I was convinced that the Bible was used by white people to take the land from the blacks,
Yeah.
you know, and so on, and many other things. And now it's me and the Bible, and I'm like, okay, right, this book has something in it, you know. And then I had to leave the shack with the Bible because the owner of the shack had to chase us away. We were not paying the rent, and we had to go back to another drug den and stay there. And, you know, eventually we were becoming homeless, or rather we were becoming, you know, stranded, you know, not having a place to stay in. So we had to look for a place. To just kind of compress the long story, we ended up seeing a place somewhere, you know, and we inquired about the place, and we were told that the owners of the place stays in El Dorado Park. We must go to El Dorado Park and inquire from the owner and to see if we can maybe use the place to stay in the place. It was a 2-room house.
Yeah.
And we went to El Dorado Park and we looked for the person, and we found the person. And I remember getting to the person's house. It was his wife who was at home. He was not at home, and the wife was apparently a prophetess. Now, I am very careful to say things, but for the sake of truth, I will say things, you know, and some of the things might be offensive even to the people, you know, if they are watching, you know, themselves. The lady professed to be a prophetess, you know.
Yeah.
And as a result, you know, the lady invited us in. I must say, the lady was kind. The lady, you know, was loving to some extent, you know. And she said, look, come to our crusades. We are having crusades. You know, our church is having crusades, so you must come and attend the crusades.
Yeah.
And you might get something out of that. I mean, we were desperate, number one. Not only did she invite us to come to the crusades, she also said her husband was not at home, and her husband will be back later, so in order for us to meet her husband, we'll have to come back later and stuff like that. First and foremost, we were desperate. We were looking for a place to stay.
Yeah.
Secondarily, we were kind of gullible. We were curious, you know, because she said there is another prophet who is the bigger prophet, if I can use the word, you know, for the lack of a better word, you know, maybe a prophet that was greater than her in a way, you know.
Yeah.
And that prophetess can tell us things about ourselves, you know, to an extent that maybe she can, you know, show us ways. Now, remember, I'm coming from a black cultural background. So, you know, if you think of someone who will tell you things about your future, you know.
Which doctors? Hey?
I mean, this person can help. You know that. Maybe this person can change our life around. You know, we need to meet this person. We must be there, you know. So we were curious to be there, you know. And
Was it initially for self-gain almost? It wasn't for, or was it for?
It was selfish. It was
For self. Yeah.
Yeah, it was for self. At first, it was.
Exactly.
It was
That's where it
motivated
starts.
by our needs, you know.
Yeah, and that's
Yes.
okay. God may use that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
You see. So we ended up in the church. Yes.
Still that same motivation you had earlier in your life where it was about money, prosperity.
Exactly.
And now you still wanted that money and prosperity.
Yes. You know, to
in the
better my
beginning.
life.
To better your life.
You know, I mean, I want a better life. I mean, as much as life was about money and enjoyment, but at the root of the whole thing was the fact that, you know, we are faced with poverty, you know, life is not good. So I need to make my life better. I need to change my life around. I need to find ways and means to make my life better from what it is.
Would you have gone there if you had a house and you had money and you had
No,
drugs
not at
and you
all.
had?
Why? Exactly. You see? So now I had to end up there, and then, yeah, I remember it was Friday evening. Interesting, eh? It was Sabbath. so I ended up there, and the lady was not around. The mother now of the house, you know, the prophetess. So we were now forced to come back, or compelled to come back the following day, you know, so because we need to meet the prophetess. And we went back home. We slept where we slept. We came back the following day, and guess what? It was Sabbath. Yes, it was Sabbath. And then the lady was there. And was she there? Yeah, I think she was there on that Saturday. I don't remember well if she was there on Saturday or on Sunday, but we found her, you know, and she started prophesying, of course, and she said interesting things. I mean, number one, she said she can tell, or rather the Lord shows her that I'm coming from prison. She could have never known that, you know, unless somebody told her that, because it was her first time seeing me, That was convincing for me. I was like, okay, I think
Let's maybe
there's
hear
something
more.
here.
Yeah.
You see? And then they started praying for us. And then, I remember the very prophecy that she gave. She said that she sees that I'm coming back from prison. And she sees that I'm going to build buildings, big buildings. Of course, that was symbolic. In other ways, God is going to use me. And stuff like that to raise his church maybe, or to raise people. I don't know. What exactly did the buildings symbolize, And I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. I mean, I would love to do that. I mean, who wouldn't, But nevertheless, that day, the Lord really broke the hardness of my heart to some extent. Because I remember exactly that day, I softened up a little bit. I was like, okay, right, maybe I should try this Christianity thing. I mean, I've tried everything, One part that I didn't mention, when I was in prison, I read a book. And I see we have a book like that in front of us, Encyclopedia of World Religions, I was searching, at some point I tried to join Islam, I tried to join Rastafarism, I tried to join Satanism, I tried everything, and God is good. I never really got into the depths of those things, Rastafarism, I joined it and I learned about their philosophy, their teachings to some level, and then I was out of it. Islam as well, the same thing, and I was out of it,
So you were starting to think and starting to contemplate.
Yes, you looking at options. Yes, religions. I mean, there must be something better out there,
Searching for truth.
Searching for truth.
Yeah.
That's what I was searching for, Now, I was like, okay, right, I have to try Christianity. I haven't tried this one. Maybe I should try it. Maybe there's something in here, And I gave in to the appeals of the Holy Spirit. I believe God was at work. There's a verse that says, Christ can save to the uttermost, those who come to God through him. And I think that verse, it resonates with me because God started working in my heart. I mean, my heart was hardened to some extent. There were things that I did in my previous life, which, you wouldn't do in your right mind. I mean, I've done quite gruesome things, if I can use the word, things that I didn't mention, of course, but I did things. In prison, I did things. I remember burning one guy with plastic. You burn a plastic and you pour it on the person. And because of the fact that he had a tattoo of, our gang, and he didn't belong to our gang, so we had to rub off the tattoo and stuff like that. There were a lot of things, that one did that hardened one's heart, that caused one to be really evil, if I can use the word, to an extent that, you become hopeless. It's as though there is no hope for change. I mean, even the people in my hometown, I think even my mother at times, I remember my mother would mention things such as, I should have never given birth to you, And when a parent starts speaking like that, you must know that, she's too much.
Yeah, she's reached her limit.
It's too much, for her to carry it. And I think it contributed to her even drinking more because it was painful for her, to behold her child doing the things that I was doing. One time she came to prison and she was told that your son is in isolatory cell, because he stabbed someone in prison, and there's a possibility that he could get more years, and he could spend more than what he came to spend really here in prison and so on. And my heart being in that place, and changing just like that. It was one night. It took only one night, and God came and broke through, and I was like, okay, right, I'm giving it a chance.
He knows how to work with us.
He knows how to work with us.
He even used in Israel's time, he used Babylon to punish Israel. He can use anything, and it goes back to that church or that prophetess or whatever. I mean, that was a turning point for you as well.
Turning point. Yeah. I mean, to think of it, it brings me to another point. All things work for good to those who love the Lord and are called according to his purposes. Yeah. It's interesting that we are all called in a way.
I was going to say, we are invited, all called.
And in a way, God shapes, circumstances. He turns the wheel of circumstances, To think of it, he is the potter. And if you remember the potter, there is that, the ancient pottery machine or whatever, it had that wheel that had to turn, I think 2 wheels, and the potter had to turn the wheel in order for him to shape whatever it's on the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that wheel represents circumstances, and it is God who shapes, or rather turns the wheel of circumstances. And for me to end up being where I was, I believe with all of my heart that God shaped the circumstances. He somehow led me in that direction.
And he never forced you.
He never forced me.
Set the opportunity for you to make a choice.
To make a choice, and I made a choice.
You made the choice. Many others, unfortunately, won't make the choice.
Won't. I had a friend. It was 2 of us. My friend never made the choice. God presented the opportunity to him too, but he never made the choice. He never chose that way.
Yeah.
He went back. He was like, you know what? I'm not joining into this thing.
It's interesting.
I'm gonna stay where I was. There was 2 of us. This friend of mine that I'm telling you, even when we went to the church, it was 2 of us.
Yeah.
But he never made that choice.
One will be taken, one will be left.
One will be left, And then we ended up joining the church, and the church offered us a job, to look after the church building, which was in El Dorado Park. They called it extension, I think extension 7 and 8, Old El Dorado Park, which is one of the most corrupt parts of El Dorado Park, and the other corrupt area, I think it's El Dorado Park extension 1 and so on. So I stayed. We were to look after the place, and they were going to give us some money. And I stayed there. And another miracle, actually, that took place was that the old man, the owner of the house, came back to us, and he said that the person whom he said to us at first that the place has been already taken, he has given the key to someone else. And then on Sunday, when we went back to him, he said, listen, guys, the guy couldn't fit his bed through the door. I will never forget that story. I will never forget that story. Now, up to this day, that doesn't make sense to me. There is no bed that could not fit through the door.
And even if it didn't,
I mean, how big that bed must have been, And even if it didn't fit, you could just take a mattress and use the mattress and sleep on the mattress. But somehow, that guy didn't think of that. He returned the key. Very interesting.
It is interesting.
And we had the key, to the place now, to stay in the place. And then we were offered this job, and then we looked after the building. Now, there is 2 things that I just want to mention before I move on to the church story. 2 things that, I think even for our viewers, especially for the youth, that they can take out of, these 2 stories that I've already mentioned, or rather already shared. My childhood background and my gangsterism background. And for the parents as well. We need to be careful how we conduct ourselves, in front of our children. We need to be careful as to the things that we do. The things we say, because those things actually, they serve as spider webs, or they serve as webs for Satan to captivate these children when they are now older. Because my childhood experience, it somehow was a platform for Satan to do what he did in my life at the later stage. That trauma, that pain, that hatred, that anger, Satan used that, as a motivation to lead me down the path to hell. Because that's where I was heading. Had I not changed, by God's grace, and I'm not saying I've made it. I don't know, I might still end up there, but God forbid.
God forbid.
But somehow, Satan used that, as a tool to lead me astray, and a lack of knowledge. Again, people, we have a different perceptions of what truth is, but there's only one truth, unfortunately.
It's one truth.
The Bible says, thine word is truth. Christ himself said, I am the truth.
Yes.
There is no other truth above and beyond that truth. But because my mother didn't know better, didn't have the truth, and I didn't have the truth, I made the choices that I made, and I ended up where I was. Satan using that as an opportunity, or rather using that as a tool to lead me astray. Then gangsterism. Gangsterism, to say it plain, it's Satanism. That's what it is, And when we use the word gangsterism in organizations, we are kind of putting flowers on what it is. The truth is, it is Satanism, And in gangsterism and in that lifestyle, there's nothing good about it. But here's the thing. God can save to the uttermost. If God could save me from that kind of life, as he did, who else he cannot save? Is there any sin too great for the Lord that he
No.
cannot deliver from? You know,
No.
I mean, God did it for me. He can do it for anyone.
Yeah.
No matter the circumstances. I mean, we often compare ourselves, you know, amongst ourselves, which is not wise according to the Bible, because the Bible says he who compares himself, and if those who compare themselves among themselves are not wise.
Yeah.
So
Compare
someone might
yourself with
say,
God.
yeah, someone might say, but my circumstances or my case is worse than yours, you know, but it doesn't matter, regardless. God can still save, you know. And then charismatic church, that's what it is. That's what it is called, because it's really, there's a lot of charisma.
Are you talking about the church now? Where?
No, the church that I was
Yes.
in. Yeah, I said before I mentioned that, I just wanted to, you know,
Yeah.
throw that in there. Now, in the church, God, I believe, led me, you know, up to that point, you know. And when I was now there, God had to teach me more things, you know. I know that it might sound as though you are denouncing the church, but it's not a matter of denouncing the church. It's a matter of pointing out, you know, a faulty system,
Yeah.
you know. And it's not about individuals in the church. It's about the system.
And how do you know it's? How
Yes.
did you
And
realize
how
that
do
it's
you
faulty?
realize that it is faulty? You know, it's about the teachings.
Correct.
It's about everything that Satan does to deceive humanity. Now, mind me, the leaders of that church, you know, for them, what they were doing and what probably some of them are still doing was the truth,
Yeah.
was correct. According to their interpretation of the scriptures, that is what God requires of them.
Does
you
it
know.
mean they 100% that they will be lost?
No.
No.
No,
No,
we
it
do not
doesn't.
know what will
Yeah.
happen down the line,
Exactly.
2 years or 3 years down.
It's the
from
system.
Now.
It's never the person.
Yes, yes. Does that mean they are demonic? They are evil? They are, you know? No, you know. But it definitely does mean that there are demonic forces behind the scenes which they might not even be aware of, they themselves, for that matter. I mean, I was not aware of that. For me, God had led me up to that point, and for me, God was in that place.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, the prophecies that were given in that church, you know, the teachings that were given in that church, for me, those were the teachings that were coming from God. Those were heavenly teachings. I mean, I didn't know better.
According to you,
I didn't
yeah.
know anything different from that, you know, and that for me was the truth. And they showed me some of the things from the Bible, and they would interpret it
Yeah.
based on what they were teaching and doing.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, I saw those things, and I was convinced that this was the truth. I mean, I was a prophet. I was a prophet myself in that church. I was, at some point, I'm given the title prophet, given the title evangelist, you see, and I prophesied myself. And I believe that the things that I was prophesying were from God.
Were you
know?
speaking in tongues in that
I
church?
spoke in tongues in the church, and I got impressions, just as you would get impressions when the Holy Spirit is speaking to you. I got impressions.
Scary.
You know, you would get an impression, you would get an unction, you would literally, sometimes you would even feel it. You know, like, what do they call it when your hairs,
Stand up.
Yeah, stand up.
yeah.
And you know, sometimes there would be physical manifestations that something is happening, you know. And for me, that was God saying to me, speak. And sometimes he would even give you words, what to say. You would literally have the impression.
Wow, so it's very important for our viewers as well and people out there. How did you realize then that
this is not-
that you felt was 100% biblical,
no.
I guess?
Yes.
How did you get out of that?
Yeah, how did you realize that
Yeah.
it wasn't 100% biblical?
Now, here's the thing. At first, I didn't. At first, it was as real as it can get.
Yeah.
You know? At sometimes, I would even throw myself on the floor. You know, an impression would come and say, listen, jump, throw yourself on the floor. And I would do exactly that. Jump, throw myself on the floor, run on the floor, do whatever the impressions tells me to do. But at that time, for me, it was the Holy Spirit that was impressing upon my heart to do those things.
Yeah,
at that
yeah.
time, that was the manifestation of God's power. You see? Then I started reading the Bible.
Here we go.
Now I spent time studying the Bible. I would lock myself in. It was a garage, you know, car garage. It was, you see, those car garages that are built as a long building.
Yeah.
And then there would be doors, you know, for cars to come in.
I see.
That sort of
Yeah.
kind of a building, you know. But it didn't have partitions inside. It was not divided. because
Like
it was a
storage
church.
spaces
Yeah, it
almost.
was a church. They were
Yeah,
using the
okay.
church. Yeah, they were worshiping in there. So I would lock myself in there. Didn't have much friends at the time because I was changing. The friends that I knew I couldn't associate myself with anymore. So I would lock myself in and study the Bible. In fact, I was not even studying it at the time. I was reading the Bible. I remember exactly, which book God used. It was the book of Corinthians, first and second book of Corinthians.
Wow.
I studied those books, and I realized that Paul, I remember what caught my attention was chapter 13, which speaks of love. And I was like, the rest of my life, I wanted to know what is the definition of love, what exactly is love. And I was like, wow, this is the definition of love. This is what love is, And I was reading on, and then it goes on and speaks about other gifts. And then it speaks about the gift of prophecy. And then it speaks about, the gift of interpreting tongues. It speaks about the gift of tongues and so on. And I was like, wow, this is exactly what happens in the church. But then I started noticing that it says that the one who has the gift of prophecy, when that person prophesies, then, he would be, it would be done orderly. In other words, you would say you have a prophecy, and then the rest of the other people who are involved would give you an opportunity to give the prophecy that God has given you.
Yeah.
You see that? And then you would sit down, and then the other one would say whatever it is, a word of wisdom or whatever. And then it says also concerning tongues, it says that if one person has a gift of tongues, when that person speaks in tongues, it will also be done orderly.
Yeah.
And then there would be someone else who would interpret. In fact, in that
his
book,
tongue.
in that book, there's a verse that speaks about order specifically.
Yes.
And then it says then in his time and so on. And then I looked at how we were doing things in the church. Things were done chaotically. I would have a word of prophecy. Sometimes I would approach the leaders and they would give me an opportunity to share the word of prophecy. But sometimes it would happen whilst we are worshiping, whilst we are singing songs of worship, and then someone would, just
fall
out
down.
of nowhere, start speaking in tongues, and someone else in that corner would start prophesying, and someone else would start doing that, and it would be chaos.
Yeah.
And then someone else would start interpreting, and someone else would start falling on the ground and stuff like that, and so on.
So it's not edifying the church. It's not
not
edifying
edifying the
the
church.
message.
Yes, and the other interesting part, when you study the word, always when prophecy was given, it was to reflect or to reveal something about God.
Yes.
It was to reveal something out about what God has done or what God is going to do.
Yes.
And it was, not many times was it personal. Most of the times it was a collective prophecy to the Israelites. And when it was given to the king, it was pertaining to what the king is doing wrong in his leadership position.
To establish order again.
To establish order, and so. But these prophecies, most of them were about prosperity, were about how, you're going to get a car,
gospel,
how
right?
you are going to expand. There were some rebukes at some point, where they would point out some sins and so on. But the majority of the prophecies were about, prosperity, how the church is going to prosper, how many cars are going to come. People will come from many places. This place is going to be a beacon for the Lord. People will come flocking here to receive healing, to receive this and that. And not that was bad in itself, but somehow, somewhere, there was
There's a
not
fine
much
line,
of...
eh?
Yes, there's a fine line.
Yeah.
There was not much of glorifying God,
Yeah.
And at some point, I must say, there was glorifying God, but it was very little. And then I started having questions. I started approaching the leadership and asking, listen, why are we doing things the way we are doing them? And the leadership always has answers. They always have answers.
Yeah.
Everywhere, the leadership. And again, I want to repeat this, that it's not because the leadership is evil. Sometimes they themselves are convinced that what they are doing is right. They themselves are convinced that what they are doing is from God. You see, they themselves are convinced that they are under the leadership and authority of the Holy Spirit. So, deception. What is deception? Deception, you don't know until...
Yeah.
It's a little bit of poison.
Exactly. A little bit of poison and a lot of juice.
Correct, yeah.
And for you are drinking juice.
And if you know you're deceived, you're not deceived anymore.
You are not deceived anymore. You are out of deception immediately. You see. But when you are deceived, you don't know that you are deceived. You don't know that this is a lie. You believe that this is truth. Delusion. You believe a lie. So they would tell me to say, this is the reason why we do the things that we do, and they would, of course, explain it their way. And but I was not convinced. I think that's where my rebellion started, because I was not convinced. It didn't harmonize with the scripture, you see. So I continued reading the scriptures. I continued studying, and at that point, I started praying a very specific prayer. Lord, I no longer trust anyone. You teach me. Show me the way, show me what is it, why did you, and I started having questions to say, if this is not where I'm supposed to be, if what is happening here is not what God wants, and therefore it's not according to God's will, and therefore God is not in it, then why did you bring me here at the first place?
And that's so important, because if someone is looking for the truth and they're looking for God, just because something says Christian doesn't make it biblical.
It doesn't make it biblical, So you are wondering, God, why did you bring me here? Did then Satan bring me here? If it is not you, what's happening? So I'm searching now. I want the truth. I want the answers. Then I came across the books of the law, and then I started reading about the 10 Commandments. I started reading, and what stood out for me there was the Sabbath. Interesting enough, because it's 10 Commandments. But I could have, majored on adultery or on thou shalt not bear false witness or whatever, but the Sabbath commandment somehow grabbed my attention, and I was like, something here.
Yeah.
You see, why are we not keeping the 7th day holy? At that time, of course, I didn't know which day was the Sabbath.
Yeah.
So it was Sunday, of course, in my mind.
But you knew the 7th day was Saturday.
No, I had to search
you had to
in order for me to
go to the dictionary.
At that time, so the Sabbath stood out. It stood out for me, and I started asking questions, and then I started wanting to know as to, which day exactly it is. And I found out at that time Google was actually still honest. I'm not saying it's not honest now, but somehow...
It has changed. I've seen it.
Some things have changed.
You have to search a bit harder now.
A little bit longer. Yeah. So when I searched, Google told me that Sabbath is actually on Saturday, And I was like, okay, right. And then I started becoming more kind of confused and questioning,
inquisitive.
To say, why inquisitive? Why are we keeping Sunday then? I again inquired from the leadership, The leadership again gave me reasons why. Every day is the Lord's day, those kind of reasons.
Nothing concise, biblically concise.
Nothing biblically, and of course the Sabbath was lost in history.
Yeah.
We no longer remember which exactly
it was his.
Yeah, calendars were changed, and all of that.
Yeah, hear all of these explanations, but it doesn't satisfy you.
Resurrection, that's great. It was his resurrection day. Yes. That's nice.
And we can keep every day, any day holy, and so on. And I was like, I'm not satisfied with these answers. And then I kept searching. Then I decided I'm going to go to the library and find any book that I can find and look for any book that I can find on Christianity. Now, I wanted to study Christianity as a whole, because my question was, did I throw myself in something else here? What am I busy with exactly here? What is this thing?
Yeah.
You see? So
the subcategories of Christianity. Let's explore.
What's happening here, And I started studying other churches, and I found one of the things that I was looking for, of course, was the Sabbath, It's interesting that I never came across Seventh-day Adventist at that point, I don't know, because I'm sure it was there on Google and stuff, but I don't know whether I did come across it, but I didn't take it seriously, or I was not really, I don't know what happened. But nevertheless, I saw that, all of the churches, what is that they believe, how they do things, and so on and so on. And then one day in the library, I came across a book. I remember the book, Christ Object Lessons. And the book was written by some author, E.G. White. I knew nothing about E.G. White. I read the book. That was the only book out of all the books that I took off from the library that I read from cover to cover. And again.
Sorry, I have to ask. How did you select that book? How were you?
Remember, I was looking for books on Christianity. I was looking at any book that has something to do with Christianity itself as a religion, or the Bible. And when I came across the book in itself, the title is biblical. Christ. Christ is object. Lesson. So this book is obviously will tell me something about Christ. Yes, it stands out. So I read the book, cover to cover. The book also, it had me. I was like, this book is amazing. The book is actually amazing. You know, how it explains, you know, the parables, you know, and stuff like that. Why did Christ teach it? But at the end of the book, I remember the publishers was Harvest Times. Harvest Time publishing house always puts at the end of their books, most of their books, they always put the study of, they would put the Sabbath, you know, worship and stuff like that. And I came across that. I read it also, you know, the Sabbath, and I was like, okay, right, this is exactly what I'm looking for. So this thing of the Sabbath, it's something in existence somewhere, you know, just not here where I am, you know. And then I was convinced of the Sabbath to an extent that I started keeping Sabbath holy on my own. You know, I didn't go to any church and stuff, and I would sit like every Sabbath. You know, I didn't do it from sunset to sunset, of course. But if I'm not mistaken, that book did tell me about sunset to sunset, but I just don't remember all the details about that. So I would keep the Sabbath holy, you know, I would sit outside and I would, you know, sing songs of worship, study the Bible. I am still a prophet, by the way, in my mind. I am still, you know, have this gift. Not everything, I mean, you can't tell me that everything was wrong. Something must be right.
No, it's steps, little steps.
The prophet gift must be the right path, and you know. So I was still a prophet in my own mind and stuff. And as a result of reading the book, you know, and of ending up, you know, observing the Sabbath and doing stuff like that, I was led to another friend of mine who his aunt, you know, was a Seventh-day Adventist. And he had some DVDs, you know, and so on. And
sorry, are you getting back to the part where you gave in the book or where you searched for more books of E.G.
My
White?
friend, how can I forget that part?
Oh, thank you.
How
I thought you were getting there.
part? Now, after reading the book, I had to take the book back to the library. Not only did I take the book back to the library, but I was very, very convinced that if I could get other books written by the same author, I will get more information as to what I was looking for. You know, that I would get maybe something, my Christian walk would become a little bit clearer. Somehow, that book, it made a lot of things clear for me, you know, and it convinced me that if I can get another book of the same author, you know, I would understand the Bible even a little bit much more better, you know, because, I mean, this one has already done the work. So I went looking for the books from the same author. I searched in the library. There was no book of the same author. I went to the receptionist or the person in charge there, the librarist, asked him, man, tell me, can I get more books by this author, you know? And the guy had to take the book, had to look in the system.
Yeah.
Number one, the very book that I was having in my hand was not in the system. Not to mention that there were no other books of that author in the library. Now, I was in El Dorado Park Township, and there was no books of that author in that library. But then he had to look in the Johannesburg library, because that's where he said to me, that's where they get their books and stuff like that. It's, you know, the mother library, if I can use the word. So maybe there might be some books of this author there. Checked in the Johannesburg library, there was none. I remember very well, there was no book of that author. And that was the only book. How did it get in the library? Not only did it get into the library, but it had, you know, that paper that they use where they put the stamp and stuff like that when you have taken the book out and taken the book. It had that stamp, and I was not the only one who had taken the book, because there were other stamps there. Now that was very interesting. I remember those details, you know.
So they couldn't even find that book?
They couldn't find it, but it belonged to the library. And it was not the first time the book, you know, has been used or taken and stuff like that.
But it's not on the system, it's not in the computer.
Not in the system. So how did it get there? Who was using it? How did it get the stamps? How did it get the library stamp and everything? But it's
we'll know one day.
There, you know. I will definitely know one day. You know, so yeah, and then that was it. That was it, the mystery of the book and you know, the miracle of the book. And later on, I got to learn, apparently, that, you know, this book, there were many other books written by this author, and that this author was actually one of the prolific, you know, authors of all times, and that this author was actually God's messenger, you know, which was very interesting for me, But anyway, after reading the book, searching more, my friend took me and we watched some DVDs, and the DVDs were by Doug Batchelor. And then, I still was filled with pride. I didn't really take it in, kind of rejected a little bit the Seventh-day Adventist being, the remnant church and so on. And at some point, I ended up being in the Seventh-day Adventist church itself. That's another story for another day, how I ended up there. But I ended up in the church, and I remember sitting in the pews there, and the atmosphere, that was it for me. It was not the singing, it was not the preaching, it was just the atmosphere within the church building. And I was like, okay, right, I think I'm here
chaos
to stay.
to order.
From chaos to order, the peace within the place, and it was as though there's something has lifted up, from my shoulders. And that was it. And God had hold of me, and not only did God have hold of me, but God led me through all the ways, and He led me through some portals, that to think of it, the church that I was in, God taking me out of that church as well into the truth, and now having, the biblical faith and, following what God really requires of us.
Wow. So that one book was the medium almost, that book you found, Christ Object Lessons.
That book is still my favorite.
Yeah,
Yes.
that pointed you to this church. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
It's amazing.
It is. It's a story with so much encouragement. It tells any single person that's in difficult situations that there is a way out. Your circumstances isn't something that should define you. You should look further than that. God is always there knocking. He wants every single person to be saved. He loves every single person, but He never forces you.
Hates the sin, but He loves the sinner.
And He gives you that opportunity. If you come to me, I will give you rest. I will give you peace. I love you. And that's why I sent my Son to die for you.
Yeah, and His blood, with His blood, it's sufficient for everyone, the whole world, no matter what you've done, no matter where you come from. Like I said, we're from different walks of life, and no matter where we've been, He can save us. He can save us. Yeah, we just need to open that door. If He knocks, we need to open it up, and that's what you've done. So I'm very glad that you've done that, and that we're all sitting here together today. We were all in different situations. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your testimony. Is there anything else you want to say to our viewers? To perhaps encourage them?
To any kids who feel like they rather want to be in a gang, or that life there's not a...
Any concluding remarks? Yeah.
I have one thing in mind, and that is know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. As we have said, that people perish due to a lack of knowledge. And if you think of it, most of the people who end up being in gangsterism, people who end up doing things that they do, it's not because they are demonic people or evil people in
inherently bad.
Yes, it's simply because, of not knowing anything better, So I would really encourage our viewers, and of course the youth specifically, to search for the truth, to find out what is truth. And when I'm saying to find out what is truth, I'm referring to truth in all aspects of life. What is the truth concerning our existence? Why are we here? Who brought us here? Do we have a purpose to be for being here? As individuals, why am I here? The truth about even family life, because sometimes our families are a mess, and as a result, they create messed up people. Or they messed up people come out of that. So search out for the truth. Find out what is truth in all aspects of life. What is it that is required of you?
Just because you are in a horrible situation or in a broken family, that doesn't mean that's the way it should be.
It should be.
It's traditional. It's traditions, and don't listen to us. Don't listen to a church. Don't listen to individuals, but do your own study.
Find out the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, to think of it as you have mentioned that, you know, I mean, think about it that our circumstances do not really shape or mold us as to how or who we become. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, even the issue of I was earlier on mentioning my hatred towards, you know, white races,
Yeah.
and maybe sometimes even blacks towards whites towards black, whatever the case may be. But the reason why we have all those issues is because we do not know the truth, you know, as to even the things that might have happened in the past. You know, why did it happen? How did it happen? Who was the instigator? Where? What is the root cause of the problem?
Yeah.
So know the truth, and the truth will set you free, you know, from all bondages that, you know, Satan can ever bring up upon someone.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that. Let's close off.
Yeah, thank you. That was very inspiring. Thank you very much. So will you just close off with a word of prayer for us?
All right, let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for this opportunity that I can be able to share my testimony, dear Father, with those who are indeed watching, or those who, of course, will also watch as they are going to be told by others, dear Father, of this testimony. Thank you, dear Lord, for having, you know, enabled us to think of the things that we managed to think of and the things that we managed to share. And it is my humble prayer, dear Father, that as this testimony goes forth, dear Lord, those who are listening or, you know, will be listening later on will also be blessed, dear Father, and that they will also see the light, and that they will also be inspired and motivated to search out for the truth, dear Father, you know, that they might have the knowledge of God and of Christ whom he has sent. For that, dear Father, is life. This I ask in the wonderful name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.